Hi everybody, welcome back to Marie's Kitchen. I'm so glad you're here. Today we are making a strawberry rhubarb pie. This pie is tart and sweet in the most delicious way. Now in Texas, we don't have a lot of rhubarb. It's pretty hard to find. We had to call 5 different stores, or actually my husband did the calling, to be fair. He had to call 5 different stores just to find a few stalks for this pie. So if you're like me and don't have easy access to rhubarb, not to worry. There is still so much to learn in this video. We're going to use a lot of techniques that apply to almost any fruit pie. I hope you'll stick around, and I can't wait to share this one with you. Let's get started. First up, we'll make a homemade crust, and this recipe is actually slightly different than the recipe I usually use, and it really is thanks to y'all. I got so many comments and questions asking me if I've ever used self-rising flour in a pie crust. Some people, they said that's all they have available is the self-rising, not the all-purpose. So I decided to try self-rising flour, and I really do like it. In every cup of self-rising flour, there is 1 teaspoon baking powder and 1/4 teaspoon salt. So you won't have to add the salt, and you will be adding baking powder. So if you want to simulate this and you don't have self-rising flour, use the all-purpose flour, add 1 teaspoon baking powder, and your usual 1/4 teaspoon salt. And if you have any questions about that, just let me know. I'll put both options in the comments. So we'll start with 1 cup of the self-rising flour. Next is 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. Then we'll add 1 tablespoon sugar. And you can use less if you're making, say, a savory pie, but I like the 1 tablespoon, especially with the baking powder, which gives a little bit of tang. The sugar balances it well. The sugar also helps the crust brown, so it is something that I do always use, but if you're avoiding it, you can leave it out. So now I am making this food crust in my food processor, as you can see. If you don't have a food processor and you'd prefer to make the crust by hand or in your KitchenAid stand mixer, you can certainly do that. I have a full tutorial on making homemade pie crust. It's called Easy Pie Crust Tutorial. It's on my channel, and it will show you how to make a pie crust in the food processor, in a bowl with your hands, or you could use a pastry blender, or in a KitchenAid stand mixer. So if you want to learn any of those options, hop over there. I'm going to use the food processor just because I like it and it's so quick. And we're going to just pulse that. That just kind of mixes everything together. Now, let me grab the butter. I always keep the butter in the refrigerator before using it because you want to have cold butter. Cold butter is really important to making homemade pie crusts, and I'll talk more about that as we go. We'll use 1 stick of butter, and that's 113 grams, or 1/2 cup. And what we're gonna do is cut this into about 8 tablespoons. It doesn't need to be exact, just about 8 pieces. Then we'll just throw our butter right here in the food processor. And what we're gonna do is just cut the butter up with the dry ingredients. So we'll pulse it about 5 or 6 times, we'll see. I'll take a peek. And this looks good. We have some butter pieces that are smaller, and then there are some that are bigger, and that's just exactly what you're going for. Now we'll add 5 tablespoons cold water. The reason you use cold water is to keep the butter cold. When you're making a pie, you really want your butter to be in kind of small pieces. And when you go to roll out the pie crust, you have those pieces of butter and then you roll it out. And the butter, when it melts, it creates a little pocket of steam, and that's how you create flakes. So if they get too warm, they just melt into the crust and you won't get that real flaky crust. So let's give this a few more pulses. That looks great. You can see much more combined there. And there is still 1 large piece of butter. If you find one like that, you can just kind of squash it and that'll work. Okay, so this is the pie crust. Let me grab my Glad press and seal, or you can use saran wrap. Now, a lot of people, when they make their pie crust, then they turn it out onto a floured countertop and bring it together, kind of work it a little with their hands to bring it together into a ball of dough. And that actually makes a huge mess. So this is what I've come up with instead. You take your pie crust in your food processor, take the blade out carefully, and then just flip it onto a piece of Glad press and seal, sticky side up, or saran wrap. We'll just flip it over, and there is your pie crust. Now, this still looks pretty dry, and you probably think, how are you gonna roll that into a pie crust? Well, if you squeeze it together, it holds together like pie dough. Now we'll just bring these edges together, and then we'll take the center, twist it, and then I shape this into a disc. You can see some butter in there, so we know we're doing good. We have actual pieces of butter in there. They're gonna help us get our flakier crust. Now we'll put this in the refrigerator for at least 20 minutes and up to 2 days. So this is a great make ahead option. You can even leave it in your fridge longer, but it'll start to turn a little bit gray from the oxidation. So a few days ahead, leave it in your fridge. If you wanna make it like 2 months ahead, wrap it in saran wrap and put it in your freezer. Then when you're ready to use it, let it thaw in the refrigerator overnight, and then you should be ready to roll it out. All right, I'll pop this in the fridge. Now we're gonna quickly make one more pie crust because we need a lattice top. So we'll need one more full pie crust for that. For pie crust number 2, it's the same measurements. We'll just scoop up 1 cup of, I'm using the self-rising flour. Then we're gonna use a 1/4 cup of the all-purpose flour. Now we add our 1 tablespoon sugar. Now we grab our butter from the refrigerator and we'll cut it into about 8 pieces. Toss those in with our dry ingredients. And then we'll give that a pulse. So we've cut in the butter, and now we'll add our 5 tablespoons water. Okay, I'll pulse this again. There we go. And this looks good. So that is the crust. Now we'll take our Glad press and seal. Press and seal is like the newer version of saran wrap. So if you don't have press and seal or don't want to use it, you can certainly use saran wrap. I've used that for years. I just find this is a little bit easier to work with. Now we'll flip the crust onto the press and seal. Okay, we'll pull the edges together. All right, this one goes in the fridge as well. It's been about 30 minutes, so now we have our pie crust out of the refrigerator. And the reason for chilling your pie crust is really 2 reasons. First, you want to let the gluten rest in the crust, so it'll, when you roll it out, it stays out and doesn't want to pull back together. Also, we want to keep the butter cold, so that gives it a chance to chill again after we worked with it initially in making the dough. So now that our crust is chilled, we'll just unwrap it. This looks good. It's a little bit sticky. I can feel it sticking to my hands, so I do want to use little extra flour maybe this time just to keep it from sticking to everything. And that's gonna happen. You're gonna have a pie crust that feels a little bit stickier, a little bit wetter one time, and then maybe the next time you make it, you might get it and it's a little bit drier. That is totally normal with pie crust. So for example, if you had a really dry spot and it was almost kind of crumbling off here, you just take some of your water and dab it on there just to hydrate that section a little more. We don't have that in this case, so everything looks good. I'm just gonna take my hands and press it out. I'm just flattening it out a little bit because it's kind of like just rolling the dough out, but using my hands, and it's a little bit easier. So we have a little bit of flour underneath, and we'll have a little on top, and then we can always grab more if we need. You can put a little bit on the rolling pin. And now when you're rolling a pie crust, you want to push with some pressure, and you're gonna go down. And after every roll, you wanna turn the pie crust 1/4 turn. So roll and turn, roll and turn. And the reason for turning is really twofold. The first is to help you keep a nice circle. When you're rolling a pie crust, it's easy to just kind of be rolling in all directions and you end up with this kind of lopsided shape that doesn't fit well in your pie crust. But if you do the roll and turn technique, you're gonna end up with a nice round circle. And the second is to prevent the crust from sticking to the counter. I've taught a lot of pie classes, and really the biggest problem people have is when they roll it out, sticking to the counter, and you cannot get it up. You pretty much have to ball it up and start over. So you really want to avoid it sticking. And when you do the roll and turn, if you feel it sticking there, you'll know quick, and you can pick it up and toss a little flour under like that to prevent it from sticking anymore. So those are the 2 reasons for the roll and turn technique. This is looking good. I can see some nice flattened butter pieces in there that will melt and give us flakes. And then how do we know when to stop? What we're gonna do is grab our pie plate. And for the pie plate, I'm using a 9-inch, very simple Pyrex pie plate. Take your pie plate, whatever you're using, and set it right on top of the crust like this. And I have about 1 inch here. You want to have about 2 inches. And that'll give us enough crust to go down, all the way across, up, and then make a nice edge. So we will need to roll this just a touch more. Okay, that looks like it should work. So there we go. When we measure it now, you see we have a bigger edge here, and that'll be helpful. Okay, now we can just fold the pie crust in half, bring down our pie plate here, and we'll take the crust and we're gonna set it right in the middle and then open that up. And don't worry if you have a few cracks or it breaks. Really nice tender pie crusts will crack and break. So if you have little cracks and things like that, it probably means you're gonna have a really delicious crust. So don't worry. All right, now we're going to we set the pie crust into the pie plate. You don't wanna press it or stretch it into it because that's going to make it wanna stretch back and pull in. So you just set it into the pie plate, hang over the edge. And now instead of trimming the edge, which a lot of people do with scissors, I instead like to make a nice thick, crust edge here. So what we're gonna do is take the pie crust and fold it under itself, and it rests on that lip, as I mentioned earlier. So fold it under itself and rest on the lip. Okay, so there's our edge. Now we'll wrap this in saran wrap, and this goes into the refrigerator again until we're ready to add the fruit and the lattice top. You can also, if you need a make ahead option, you can make this ahead and leave it in the freezer wrapped in saran wrap. Really double wrap it, put it in the freezer for up to 2 months. This goes in the fridge now. Okay, so here is our second pie crust. I just got it out of the refrigerator. Again, we'll sprinkle a little flour there, and I'll press it out a bit with my hands. As I've said before in my pie crust videos, this is not a perfect pie. And the reason it's not is because perfect is not the standard for a pie. When I have a pie, I want it to be delicious and memorable and satisfying and sweet and flaky and homemade. I never think of, oh, this pie is perfect. There's just no such thing. In my opinion. So I invite you to make an imperfect pie with me. Okay, now we'll start to roll this out. Now the difference on this top crust is that will be used for the lattice top. So you don't have to have it in a real circular shape. It can be a little bit longer this way because we're gonna cut it into strips. All right, let's give this a roll. Okay, this looks good. Well, I usually use a pie crust cutter, but I can't find it. So just as well, not everybody has one. So I'm just gonna use a pizza cutter, which works really well for this. And you do not need to measure. These don't have to be exact. We'll cut these about, I think they're about 1 inch wide. So what I'm doing is cutting a little, and then you hold this bottom piece down. Otherwise, it will kind of roll up in a ball. There we go. I'll set my little lattice strips over here on a parchment lined baking sheet, and then I think I'll pop it in the fridge for a minute while we make our filling. You always want to keep your crust cool. Pop these in the fridge. All right, finally for the fruit. And the reason I didn't do the fruit first is I wanted to have the pie crust done already, because if you put the fruit with the sugar for a long time, the sugar will pull out the water in the strawberries and you'll end up with a big soupy mess. So don't leave the strawberries in the sugar for more than like 15 to 30 minutes. Now for these, we're just gonna quarter them. And we'll need about 2 cups of strawberries, which is about 300 grams. So that was about anywhere from 15 to 20 strawberries. Now we'll put this over in a big bowl here to be mixed with our rhubarb. Now for the rhubarb. And like I said, this was hard to find in Texas. It's a little easier to find in the spring or early summer because that's when it really is in season. But I was able to find some, fortunately, to make this pie. So we have our rhubarb. I went ahead and cut it in half because these are really big. And then we'll just cut this into about 1/2 inch or 1 centimeter pieces. So pretty small pieces. The very first time I tried strawberry rhubarb pie was in New Jersey. I was visiting my sister-in-law and they brought some home and I didn't really know what to expect. And I was in shock. It was so good. I just loved it. And since then, I've just have a thing for strawberry rhubarb pies. Okay, let's see how much we have here. Oh, Peppers is having a nightmare. I think she's probably running in her dream. It's so cute. Let me see if I can show you. Well, she stopped running, but you still got to see my sweet Peppy sleeping over there. Her name's Cocoa Puff, a lot of people have asked, and she's a golden doodle. So without our rhubarb, it's about 2.5 cups or about 300 grams. Now we're ready to add our sugar, tapioca, and other seasonings. For the sugar, I'm gonna use about 3/4 cup. And if you like it a little less sweet, you can certainly move that down to 2/3 cup. You can also add some lemon or orange zest. That'll kind of brighten up the tartness and make it not as sweet. For the thickener, we're gonna use what's called minute tapioca, and that's quick cooking tapioca, and it's really available in just about every grocery store. So hopefully you can find it. We're gonna use 3 tablespoons. This works really great as a thickener for really watery fruit pies, and this is one that can be very watery. We'll use 1/2 teaspoon salt. Now we'll give that a quick stir. Now we'll toss this on the fruit. And I'm also going to add a splash of vanilla, about 1 teaspoon. I really like the vanilla flavor with the strawberries and rhubarb. We're gonna give that a toss and let this sit for about 15 minutes while we get our pie crust ready. We'll preheat the oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh my gosh, it's starting to smell so good with the vanilla and the sugar. Oh, yum. Let's set that aside and I'll grab the pie crust and we're ready to assemble the pie. Now we're ready to assemble the pie. So we're just pouring the filling right into our crust here. I will give it a little pat here just to prevent any gaps from forming like that. Okay, and now we're ready to add our lattice top. For the lattice top, we'll just take our strips like this and then these on the side like that. Of course, you want to use the shorter pieces for the outer edges because you don't need as much length to get all the way across. And that looks great. Now, to make the lattice, you're gonna pull back every other one. So we'll pull back these 2 first, all the way to the middle. And then you just drop actually not to the middle because we don't wanna center these 2 since we're using 4, but almost to the middle. Then we'll fold those down. We'll fold up these here, 1 down here, fold those down. Then we're gonna go to the other side, and since these strips go under here, we're gonna pull these 2 back. Put 1 there, put this down. So you're kind of weaving, it's fun. Now we pull these back and lay the short one there. I think it's fun. Isn't that cool? I love how lattice turns out. It's really just so pretty. And the benefit of doing lattice top on a strawberry rhubarb pie is that there's plenty of air holes for the liquid to evaporate. If you do a whole top crust, you may end up with a soupier filling because there's not as much air holes for the water to evaporate. Now we'll just pinch off the edges here of some that are a little bit too long. You want to leave yourself a little room at the end because what we're going to do is turn it under this crust. So you just under the crust and then kind of press it into the crust so it becomes one with the crust. That's what I'm doing for mental health these days. I'm just becoming one with my pies. Really, I do think baking it's so good for your mental health. It's just a great way to focus on something, make something pretty. And that's one of the reasons I love cooking is I'm a real worrier. And so when I get in the kitchen though, and I start cooking or baking, I just kind of lose all that. You do have to take care of yourself though. One thing I've learned, you really have to, especially if if you're taking care of other people. I hope you're all taking care of yourselves. Okay, that looks great. And now we can make our fluted edge that we talked about earlier. Put a little flour on the hands. And then to make the fluted edge, when you do have a filling, it is easier probably to use your thumb. So we'll just go around pressing the 2 fingers and thumb in between. I like to make kind of a fat edge. Okay, there's our strawberry rhubarb pie. Now, quickly, we'll do the egg wash. And this is optional. It's going to give it a nice golden, kind of glossy finish. It's just beautiful. Put the egg over here. We'll give this a quick whisk. Now, to that, we're going to add about 2 teaspoons of water. If you've seen my other pie crust videos, you know I like to strain the egg wash. And I think what you could do is probably just use the yolk and avoid straining it. But this is what I do just to get all those little gooey pieces out. There we go. We'll just spread some egg wash on here. And you just try not to get it on the fruit, but otherwise just paint it on. Now for the final little decoration, we're going to use some raw sugar, and that is it's just called sugar in the raw, and it adds a little bit of sparkle and crunch to the top. To bake the pie, especially a strawberry rhubarb pie, you're going to want to put it on a baking sheet lined with parchment paper, because this pie may overflow, and if it does, you really don't want to have to clean that up in your oven. It makes a huge mess. So, and even if the filling doesn't overflow, sometimes the crust can melt down a little bit. Some of the butter melts down, and even that's hard to clean up. So always, always bake your pies on a cookie sheet with parchment paper, and that'll be easiest for cleanup. Now we have the oven preheated at 400 degrees. Now we'll pop this in the oven at 400 for about 20 minutes, and I am going to put it on the very bottom rack in the oven, and that hot bottom rack will help cook the bottom of the pie and get it nice and golden brown. So into the oven. Whoa. Now I'm going to get some lunch. I'll see you back in a bit. All right, the pie is ready, so we're going to grab it out of the oven. This looks so beautiful. It smells so good. I desperately want a piece right now, but we are going to have to let this cool for about 4 hours. That is going to really help the filling set up. If you cut into it right now, it's going to be soupy and messy, but 4 hours or overnight, that will give it time to firm up. So make sure you plan for that, and I will taste it in 4 or 5 hours. I may be in my pajamas, but I will taste it. And look how nice and golden this crust came out. You can see the filling looks great. I did get a toothpick here, and you can just poke that in a strawberry, and it's just, or the rhubarb, and it's real soft. So the texture is great. You can also see it didn't get overcooked. There is a possibility of overcooking strawberry rhubarb pie, and it can just turn to mush. But this one looks great. Okay, as promised, we are back in our pajamas, and we are ready to finally taste the strawberry rhubarb pie. Ready to try it?
Yeah.
Oh, no doggy in the kitchen.
What? She loves it.
Now we're gonna need an honest taste test, okay?
Honest taste.
But be sure you say you like it.
Okay. Sure.
Oh, looks pretty good, right? What do you think?
Good shot.
Looks
Ooh,
good?
Yeah, looks good.
She loves strawberries, right?
Yeah. Strawberries. I love strawberries so much. They're my favorite fruit.
Okay, let's see.
I'm really good.
Okay. Oh, that looks really good. I wanted a little ice cream with mine. Well, I guess I need a bigger piece. Okay, second piece coming out. What a nice filling. I love how it holds together. It's not dripping everywhere, so you don't have a watery mess. The bottom crust feels great. The top is beautiful. Here goes the taste test. Oh my gosh. I know a lot of people were worried about it being too sweet. I don't think this is at all, right?
This is really good. Thank you, Mom.
Thank you. I really hope you get to try this one. If you are planning on trying it, or if you do get to, leave me a comment and let me know. I would love to hear how it turns out, or if you have any questions, you can always leave those as well. Be sure to like this video, and if you haven't yet, subscribe. We're trying to get to 100,000 followers, and it's so close. So if you're watching it and you enjoy the videos, please subscribe. I've got lots more videos coming up with easy recipes just like this, and I don't want you to miss any of them. For this recipe and more, head over to my website, mariesaba.com. There you can go and print out this recipe and all my recipes, and if you like, put them in a notebook and make your very own Marie's Kitchen cookbook for free. My goal is to give you some really easy recipes that turn out great every time, so you can build some confidence in the kitchen and feel really inspired to share good food with people that you love. From my kitchen to yours, thank you.